Hello BookTube, this is Weekly Reads. I started this past reading week with The Surrendered by Chongri Lee. This is a novel about a Korean War refugee who goes on a journey to discover lost secrets or something. The Surrendered was one of the books I selected for my America 20 project, and ultimately ill-fated attempt on my part to love literary fiction. In order to do this, I selected 20 American novels written between 1980 and 2020. Of the 10 novels that I've collected, I've had goes at 9 of them, and only one of those 9 I've actually finished, and I liked it. I didn't love it. It was okay. The Surrendered was not one of those books. I really disliked it from the very first chapter. The novel opens with the main character June and her siblings riding on the roof of a boxcar train, hoping to reach Busan and a refugee center. As they are riding the train, the novel kind of flashes back to a few incidents of June and her family's life as refugees, as fleeing the conflict. And it went on. It was a little too brutal, and I really did not like this first chapter, so I skipped the end part, hoping the second chapter might entice me to keep reading. It did not, so I bailed on The Surrendered. So I had enough time on Saturday after I bailed on The Surrendered to read something else, so I decided to reread one of my favorite poetry collections, A View with a Grain of Sand by Wislawa Szymborska. Szymborska was a Polish poet who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in the late 90s, I want to say. I reread this collection every year. I've had it for nearly 20 years, and I love it every time I read it. And revisiting the collection this past weekend was what I needed. I really enjoyed it, and I've talked about this collection a lot. So, sticking with poetry, on Tuesday I reread Voluntary Servitude by Wunderlich. Again, this is one of my favorite collections of poetry. I bought it nearly 20 years ago and loved it. I did get rid of it when I did a massive purge of the books I had collected when I was a English major, but I've since recollected it, and quite happy I did. I just really enjoyed this collection too. Now, moving on to the manga. I did mention I did plan for this past reading week to read a significant amount of manga, and I did. I read the most recent 9 volumes of Eden Zero, starting with volume number 8 by Hiro Mashima. I forgot to mention that. Volume 9. Let me go ahead and get all of these out. Okay. Volume 10. Volume 11. Volume 12. Volume 13. Volume 14. Volume 15. And Volume 16. Hiro Mashima, is one of my favorite manga artists, but Eden Zero is about a young boy named Shiki, who is the adopted grandson of the great demon king Ziggy, an android who lived on a planet populated by androids that served as a sort of tourist attraction planet. The androids are nearing the end of their lives. They're losing power, and before the entire population shuts down, a young woman named Rebecca and her exceed companion Happy come to visit the planet to film videos. She's a beekeeper, basically a YouTuber. The androids appear to malfunction and threaten to kill Rebecca and Happy. Shiki saves them, and he accompanies them on their adventures. They have the goal to visit the giant space goddess Mother. And as the trio adventure, they gradually pick up a crew that will eventually form the crew of Eden Zero, a spaceship that was left for Shiki by his grandfather. So they first pick up another android named Pino, and a past version of a character named Professor Wise. They also pick up Homura, a samurai, which an android that serves as one of the four shining stars of the Eden Zero. They also pick up two of the other four shining stars, Sister and Hermit, and they gradually pick up more. So the volumes I read this past weekend started with the crew journeying to the planet Sunjul in search of Valkyrie, the fourth of the four shining stars. Valkyrie had taken in Homura as her student and had traveled to Sunjul to find Homura's mother, Kurenai, who gradually became the tyrant of Sunjul, and Volume 7 ended with Shiki breaking into Kurenai's headquarters, asking if Kurenai was Kurenai and Homura's mother, and then proclaiming that he was going to take Kurenai to see her daughter, but first he was going to kick her butt. And so Volume 8 is basically Shiki kicking Kurenai's butt and the rest of his crew aiding the oppressed of Sunjul to overthrow Kurenai's regime. As this storyline is wrapping up, a new storyline starts to form in which a crime lord named Drake and Joe shows interest in the Eden Zero, or rather one of the crew members. So the crew of the Eden Zero confronts Drake and Joe, and they are brutally defeated. And it is just that first defeat is brutal and very well done. And then Rebecca comes into her powers and sort of allows for a second go with Drake and Joe, which goes very differently, but it is so well done. I love that arc. And so then they add two more crew members who were they used to work for Drake and Joe, although there were two of the nicer ones. And so then they go back to Shiki's home planet, where they encounter who may very well be the main antagonist of the entire series, although I'm a bit cautious about that because it's still early days, I think, in this manga. Even though I do think Eden Zero has a tighter plot than, say, Fairy Tail, which was arc by arc. I do think it's still maybe early days before any final, this is the main antagonist of the entire series, can really be stated. So now the crew has a new goal, which is not only to find Mother, but also to stop this main antagonist from enacting his evil plan. And to do this, they travel to another part of the universe. For most of the series to date, the series had taken place in the Sakura cosmos, and so they moved to the Aoi cosmos, which is ruled by a tyrant named Poseidon Nero. There's conflict going on, and the crew of Eden Zero, as well as other allies, get dragged into it. It begins the Aoi War, which is where the volumes wrap up, which is pretty much the later volumes are sort of a prelude to the Aoi War, which we'll go through the next several volumes, which I haven't gotten yet. But anyway, I loved these 9 volumes. I'm loving Eden Zero. I can't wait for volume 17 to come out next month, and the rest of the series later on this year, and obviously into the future. I'm loving the characterization, the art, how Mashima handles grief, handles a lot of heavy stuff. It's really good. And I also really like how he ends the volumes. He'll have a little afterword where he'll talk about the production of the series, some behind the scenes looks at the individual volumes. It's all really fascinating stuff. And so yeah, definitely I'm loving Eden Zero. Now I'm going to have to put them back up. Which is one thing I need to work on, is I'm not happy with where I have my manga right now, which is basically my headboard bookcase. And it's just a bit inconvenient. I mean, I like it because it's like close to me, but it is rather inconvenient to get out, particularly the volumes that are on the second shelf, or the bottom shelf. Anyway. There we go. Excuse me. So I started moving on to June. I started Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry for June on the Range, a booktube reading event created by Michael K. Vaughn, in which participants read a Western during the month of June, or a whole lot of Westerns depending, but I decided to just go with one, Lonesome Dove. Excuse me. This is an epic Western about ex-Texas Rangers who have since gone into cattle ranching, who decide to leave their property on the Texas-Mexican border and move to Montana, where they've been told the environment is much more conducive for cattle. So it's basically from the Mexican border to the Canadian border. I'm not loving this. I'm not entirely sure I even like it. I think it's okay. So what I liked about, or what I've liked so far about Eden's Lonesome Dove, I'm about 161 pages in, is I like McMurtry's descriptions. I like how he sets the scene. I also like the tension he can introduce in set piece action sequences as well as in confrontations between characters. What I'm not liking is, and so far it hasn't been enough to piss me off to where I bail, is there are three things right now. One is there's this female character named Lorena who's a prostitute, and it seems like half the male cast of the book are in love with her, cripplingly infatuated with her. And there is something about this trope, archetype, story thing that it pisses me off. I don't know if it's just I don't relate to it. I've never experienced this crippling infatuation with someone to where I can't sympathize, or if it's because I've always hated this kind of storytelling because it drags on the story. It's sort of a complication that really isn't shown, it's more told. I don't know, I hate it whenever I see it. And there's a lot of it in this book, to the point where I think, how can you differentiate Newt and Dish? I don't know. So that annoyed me and pissed me off. The second thing that's annoying me about the book is it is certainly too long. There are whole pages devoted to the sign for the Hat Creek Cattle Company and Livery Emporium. That is it really necessary to have that in there? We've already been shown that Augustus McCrae is a blowhard, a know-nothing know-it-all. Do we really necessarily need more of that? But it's in there. And then there's also a chapter from Lorena's point of view that basically flashes back to maybe 50 pages earlier. It's like, I don't. So that's kind of annoying me. Well, it is annoying me. It's not kind of, it is. And then the third thing that's annoying me is a lot of the dialogue. It doesn't seem real. It seems more like speeches that you would see in a play, a drama, rather than people talking to each other. It's sort of like if you've ever seen like Law and Order. Sometimes they'll get into that on that, and it bugs me. So again, I'm definitely not loving Lonesome Dove. I don't think I'm liking it either. I can certainly say it's okay. But I think I can power through. We'll see. This weekend will be the big test. Because so far I haven't been bored enough to bail, and I've managed to survive a lot of scenes that have pissed me off, and I haven't bailed yet with that either. So maybe I'll be able to finish this. I would like to, but I don't think I'm going to have very charitable things to say about it once I finish it up. Hopefully by next Friday is hopefully when I will finish it. So that pretty much concludes what I've been reading and what I will be reading this following week, because I'm pretty sure it will take me well into next week, if not up to next Friday, before I finish Lonesome Dove. But I didn't want to end it there. So what I'll be doing this week is I'm going to be talking about some of the nonfiction I'll be reading after I finish Lonesome Dove. And then next week I will talk about the fiction and the manga I plan on reading after I finish Lonesome Dove, and then leave it sort of as a bit of a surprised what I read the next time I do weekly reads. So anyway, so the nonfiction I will be reading after Lonesome Dove will be A Very Queer Family Indeed by Simon Goldhill. This is the story about the Benson family, whose patriarch was a high-ranking member of the Church of England, and whose entire family, all of his children, seem not to have been strictly heterosexual. Sounds interesting. I've dipped into this novel or this history, and I quite like what I've read so far, so I'm quite looking forward to it. I'm also planning on reading The Deviance War by Eric Cervini. This is the story of Frank Kameny, who was an astronomer who worked for the U.S. government, who, since he was gay during one of the periodic witch hunts for gay people to be fired, he was fired and he sued the government over it. I've heard good things about this book, and so I'm looking forward to getting to it. And I'm also planning on reading A Queer Legacy, Stories from Chicago's LGBTQ Archives by John D'Amelio. I'm quite looking forward to. So that's all I've got for this week. Again, let me know what you think of the new camera. If you think I should go back to my tablet, or if this camera works well enough. Anyway, so do let me know. So far, for me, I'm not necessarily loving this. I'm not like image. It's just not quite liking it. Might take me some time to get used to, but we shall see. So anyway, BookTube, that's all I've got for this week. Next week, I'm planning on doing a bunch of tag videos. There been quite a few tags that have come up the last few weeks that I've been meaning to do, so I'll be trying to get a huge swath of them done next week. And if I decide I want to do a discussion video, I'll do that too. I did try some this past week, and it didn't quite turn out how I'd hoped, so yeah, but maybe next week we'll have some better luck. So in a BookTube, I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you, have a great week, rest of your evening and weekend, and I will see you next Friday. Until then, thank you and stay safe.